You remember the moment before it even makes sense. Your name is called quietly, and your chair scrapes the floor as you stand. The room feels suddenly smaller, every pair of eyes following you. Back then, no one spoke. They didn't need to. The silence did all the talking. You step into the corridor, polished floors stretching ahead, footsteps echoing louder than they should. It's only a short walk, but it feels endless. Today, it might seem ordinary, even forgettable, but back then, that walk carried weight, and every child knew it. Long before anyone explained why it mattered then, to understand why that short walk felt so heavy, you have to remember what school was like then. From the 1950s through to the 1980s, British classrooms ran on clear lines of authority. Rows of desks, one voice at the front, and rules that were understood without needing explanation. You didn't question them, you absorbed them. The school office sat apart from everyday life, often at the end of a corridor, slightly quieter, slightly colder. It wasn't a place you visited casually. It was where records lived, messages were passed, and important decisions seemed to happen behind closed doors. For a child, it felt like crossing into the adult world. Today, school offices are open, busy, and familiar, places parents pop into without a second thought. But back then, that door carried mystery. It represented order, expectation, and the sense that something serious awaited. And that was exactly why the walk mattered so much. In those days, authority wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, steady, and unquestioned, shaping behavior through routine alone. That atmosphere framed every lesson, every hallway, and every step toward that door. It's impossible to separate the memory from the system that created it. Back then, most people don't remember what was said in that office. They remember the walk. The corridor seemed to stretch longer than it ever had before, lined with notice boards, coat pegs, and doors you rarely noticed. The smell of floor polish hung in the air, sharp and clean, mixing with chalk dust carried from the classroom behind you. Somewhere, a clock ticked, steady and unforgiving, marking time far too loudly. Each step invited your imagination to run ahead. Had someone noticed a small mistake? Had a rule been quietly broken without realizing? No one explained, and that was the point. The not knowing did the work all by itself. In those seconds, your mind filled the silence with possibilities far bigger than reality usually delivered. You walked past classrooms where lessons continued as normal, voices muffled through walls, life carrying on without you. That separation made it worse. You were alone with your thoughts, learning something without being taught it. Today, children are often told what's happening straight away, guided through conversations and reassurance. Back then, silence was the lesson. The frosted glass of the office door came into view, blurring shapes inside, adults moving with purpose. You slowed without meaning to. This was the edge of the known world. Whatever waited beyond that door almost didn't matter. The walk had already done its job, imprinting itself far deeper than any words spoken afterward. It was a quiet rite of passage, shared by millions, rarely discussed aloud. Years later, that memory still returns uninvited, triggered by a long hallway or a sudden hush. Because in that moment, before anything happened, childhood learned how power felt. And that lesson lingered, shaping confidence, caution, and respect. Long after the bell rang and the corridor emptied again, in ways few ever fully explained later. Why did that office carry so much weight? It wasn't simply a room. It was a symbol. For a child, stepping inside meant crossing into adult territory, where expectations felt heavier and mistakes felt permanent. This was a place run by grown-ups, spoken about in lowered voices, where decisions were written down and remembered. Being called there meant being seen not as a pupil, but as a person expected to understand responsibility. The office itself added to the feeling. It was often many things at once: the head teacher's space, a quiet corner for care and notes, a hub of records and folders that seemed to contain everyone's story. Children rarely entered unless invited, so the unfamiliar details stood out. The firm desk, the tidy piles of paper, the sense that time moved differently inside those walls. Today, school spaces feel more open and explained, with conversations replacing mystery. But back then, that room represented growing up before you felt ready. It wasn't about fear alone. It was about realizing that actions carried meaning and that adults expected you to recognize it. That understanding, once learned, never quite left, following you back down the corridor and into life beyond school. What stayed with us wasn't the telling off. It was the waiting, that pause, that stretch of uncertainty, quietly taught lessons no timetable ever listed. You learned to sit with your thoughts, to consider your actions, to feel the weight of choice. In small ways, it built confidence because you survived it. In other ways, it built caution, a respect for rules that came from experience rather than explanation. Decades later, many still remember that feeling low in the stomach, even if the details have faded. Times have changed, and schools now speak more openly about feelings and support. That is a good thing. Yet those silent moments shaped a generation who learned resilience through routine and responsibility through expectation. The walk back to class always felt different from the walk there. Something had shifted. You returned not just relieved, but slightly older, carrying an understanding you hadn't had before. Would it feel the same today? Probably not. Modern schools are brighter, more open, built around conversation and reassurance rather than silence. Children are guided, spoken to, helped through moments that once unfolded wordlessly. Something intangible has shifted, neither better nor worse, just different. Yet shared memories still bind generations together. That walk may be gone, but the memory still knows the way, echoing softly whenever we pass a long corridor and remember who we once were. For more of these unbelievable memories, tap the video on your screen. The 1970s stories are something else. Don't forget to subscribe.